I just wanted to do that.
Okay. Just get it out of your system.
Yep.
Whatever you have to do, get it out of your system.
Sure. So we had a really awesome interview with Corey Miller, and he is the president of Ratio Christi. And he had some really serious current event news to share. What's going on in Christendom in the West and here in the United States, especially, in a coalition effort with Christians and non-Christians.
Yeah, and even people who are not of the faith, which I thought was really
Yeah.
fascinating and wonderful. Just like-minded people that cared about the effort of freedom of speech on campus, which I think most of us know right now that's a really crucial issue. So we had him on, and he came to talk about that legislation that's being brought forth. And
He even mentioned working together with Peter Boghossian, who's an atheist, big known for the street epistemology, that kind of thing, but coming together on common ground because they appreciate the freedom to debate each other, even though they have differences, and the free exchange of ideas, that kind of thing. I may not believe what you believe, but I'll defend to death your right to believe it, that kind of idea. That's the gist of it, and it's fascinating because it feels very historical. It feels like a pivotal moment in history. We mentioned Os Guinness too, how he said this is the crunch generation. And honestly, it feels like some big paradigm shifts are happening, and it's good to be alert, be in prayer, and it's a very informative interview. You might get a lot out of it, might make you really think.
We really need to be in prayer about the future of the education system and the future generations, and really being in prayer that universal ideas are really truly taught, that it's not just this safe space, and that it's not people receding into whatever kind of tribe that they're in. And that's what college has kind of become. It's just been this mono narrative, if you will, only one really narrative out there. And that's definitely been more of a leftist ideal, a new leftist ideal that's being brought forth, but then it's been brought to our attention.
And he clarifies what that means to the new leftist versus leftist.
Right. And
there's all these terms,
nuances, all that. But it's been also brought to our attention that some conservatives have been kind of buying into some of that too, where they just want to hear their own view. Yeah, and that's it. And so
it's basically an echo chamber, and power makes law.
Yeah. And what we don't realize is when we're doing that, we're buying into postmodernism without realizing it, that we only want to hear our own tribe, if you will.
Yeah.
And we don't want to hear from.
I think it's healthy to intentionally connect with people of different worldviews to prevent the echo chamber, even while maintaining a firm conviction to hold the essential beliefs you have.
Mm-hmm.
Chesterton talked on that, where you can close your mind on the good, that's true, but being open-minded in the pursuit of learning. And none of us know everything, so in that sense we should be teachable and coachable, but maintaining our stance on a firm foundation. And that's what this interview is all about.
Yeah, and it was really thought-provoking to both of us, and we're really hoping that it brings something of value to you guys. And if you have anything that you want to chime in about, let us know.
Yeah.
If you
have questions for Corey, if he ever came back on, if you have ideas, topics that we need to cover, we'll go out and validate. Or, we need a lot of prayer warriors now. I mean, when you're in ministry like that,
and Corey does too.
So right. Please be in prayer for Corey and anyone out in the front lines in that sense,
mm-hmm.
who is putting their neck out there in this time. And, my prayer is, and this truly is, as it shows in the word, is if at possible, be at peace with all, right? It says if possible. So to the best we can by prayer and action, we should try our best to be at peace with all people. Now, there's a firm line that you'll have a boundary, that it's like, I swear to go no further. And that's another discussion as well. And both are kind of touched on in that interview as well. So, but we will unpack more of that in some other interviews too, because it's so important, the nuances of that.
Yeah. So thank you so much for joining us. And just know that we wish you were right here with us. And that's what makes us always so difficult, is I really wish that you guys were here.
Yeah, that'd be fun. And that's part of why we do this. It's because we care about those who need community, who might be displaced, or you just might be looking for some content that is relevant to what you're looking for, because we want to cover the nuances and complexities of controversial views.
Yeah, I remember when I was really sick and bedridden, I at least got to the point where I could watch videos, because there was like a good year or so where I couldn't even do
You're getting
that.
emotional.
Yeah, where I couldn't even do that.
It's not a bad thing. I'm just saying.
But I remember I would purposely watch certain videos because it felt like a sense of community. It felt like I wasn't as alone, and we hope that we can at least provide that for you guys. And
that's honestly one of our biggest whys, is where we came from and still are in some ways. We want to be there for people like that, and who miss the community, especially in certain places that is in severe lockdown. But even still, you know, if you have a local church or whatever, we're here as just a community for fellow believers.
And I think, yeah, and I think we had kind of more of a severe reaction to needing community and being away from community, but we all have that sense and that longing. So we definitely want to tap into that and be here for you in that respect. And we, of course, are here because we care about the Christian worldview. We care about glorifying God, and it's definitely not always easy to show up, but but we do it because, first and foremost, because we know this life is short. Life is like a vapor, and we want to make the best of it. And we want to be here for you. So let us know how we can be here for you, and how we can be a blessing to you. And what content you're looking for specifically too, how we can help you. We plan on having things in the future on marriage, on other topics that cover biblical worldview, because that's the really great thing about biblical worldview. It covers the scope of so many things. So
you could see more details as a bird's eye view at valormedia.org. Thank you so much. Your prayers, we really appreciate. We can't do without that and the support. So thank you so much. And with your help, we'll continue on with these episodes and interviews and content.
So thanks for listening. And for those who are watching us on the vlogcast side of things, thank you for watching.
So Corey said, we are partnering with Muslims, Mormons, and common sense folk on basic civics. A Muslim civic organization and the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints have, among a dozen other groups, joined our litigation efforts at Ratio Christi with an additional recent letter, and decent, right? To the Department of Education. We, Ratio Christi, are the intervening defendant in the case to secure a regulation initiated by the Trump administration's Department of Education so that religious groups on campuses aren't penalized for believing religious things on campuses. Shocking. Imagine if gay groups couldn't believe gay things. Happy Pride Month. Radical atheists and social justice groups are seeking to get the Biden admin to reword or remove the freedom regulation, relieving universities to declare open season on religious groups on the campus. The atheist litigations suspended their forward progress last month because of our intervention, a strategic victory for us, praise God. But the Biden admin is still free to independently determine what to do with the new regulation, and they are, as expected, considering it. So I'm very happy to partner with Mormons, Muslims, and even Republican atheists who reached out to us, as well as classical freedom-loving liberals, to defend the common sense regulation. The new left hates it because the regulation implies that a university risks its federal funding if said university decides to discriminate against religious groups, putting the free speech and free thought of religious groups in jeopardy. # freedom, not tyranny. So
there's a lot there.
There it is, but it's important.
Yeah, definitely.
So could you give us the backstory? And, you know, there's so much that I'm sure is behind that.
So the backstory to the recent letter. The recent letter was a coalition letter of organizations that included a Muslim group, a Mormon group, Campus Crusade for Christ, and many others, and us, of course, to encourage the Biden administration to keep the regulation that was put in last September by the Trump administration's Department of Education under Betsy DeVos. And that regulation was intended to preserve religious groups to believe religious things without being penalized by universities. Universities do not have the right to tell religious groups what they can and cannot believe. There's this thing called the Constitution for that.
We're forgetting that a lot lately, right?
Yeah. And so the universities sometimes think they have more power than they do, but in the spirit of the Apostle Paul in the New Testament, we appeal to Caesar for our rights as Roman citizens, as U.S. citizens, and so the regulation was so that if universities did, in fact, decide to discriminate against religious groups for their beliefs by either inhibiting them from becoming an approved club on campus, a student club, or by removing their approved club status, then the federal government could think twice about whether or not they would grant some of their federal funding to that university. So if the university discriminates, the government can discriminate. These are public universities, and they are publicly funded universities. So they need to treat everybody with equality.
Right.
The American atheists with the Secular Student Alliance found out that Ratio Christi and ADF had partnered in this to become the intervening defendants on behalf of the new administration, the Biden administration's Department of Education, defending that regulation. Wow. And once they found that out, for some reason they decided to suspend their forward progress for the time being, which was a strategic victory. But at the same time, it means the Biden administration is still free to determine what they are going to do with that regulation. The Secular Student Alliance tried to motion to get us removed as intervening defendants. Our attorneys argued back that we have just as much interest as SSA does. If they've got interest, then we have interest. And so it looks like it's on pause, which is fine. But this letter was sent by the coalition to try to strengthen the reasoning for the regulation. It is not put there so that religious groups can discriminate against other people. It's put there so that religious groups could believe religious things equally the same as other groups.
Yeah. That actually complements this book by Os Guinness, The Global Public Square, that I've been reading.
So we'll just show that up there real quick. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but he has worked with the UN on some of these kind of matters with free speech. Now, what really interested me about all this with your work, Corey, was that you're partnering together with other people outside of the Christian faith. What would you say to people that would say, well, that's syncretism, or you shouldn't be working with people outside the faith that you're compromising? So just curious.
Which is a common thing, believe it or not.
Yeah, I mean, this happens all the time. Atheists, Christians, Jews, Buddhists, you have to work together to dig a ditch or build a road, feed the poor. So when it comes to legislation, you've got to get 51% to get legislation passed. So it's not necessarily compromise. There's diplomacy there. But if it's for a common good, then there's no reason we shouldn't come together in agreement on things that we in fact agree upon. So in this case, you had other religious groups, but the Republican atheists also contacted us because they think that this is not free thinking. One time when I was a professor at Indiana University and I had a former student who turned gay and charged me with creating a suicidal environment simply because I offered both views and I tried to create an education rather than indoctrination. I gave an atheist textbook and one that was pro-gay, and I wanted to give the other position so the students could see both sides. Well, I had Alliance Defending Freedom come in to take my case pro bono, but I also had two of my atheist students who defended me and threatened the university that they would leave that university for a lack of free thinking. I was
That's amazing.
That's amazing.
That's a victory.
Yes.
I don't come across that many atheists that are like that. So, most atheists that you think of are more militant type. And so that's nice to kind of get outside of that stereotype there, that there's atheists that truly are more intellectually honest and truly wanting a universal of ideas out there. And that's what I was also curious about too. I went to a Christian university many years ago, because I'm not a Gen Z or anything like that. I'm much older. And just seeing the comparison and the difference decade more later, that now you have the safe spaces and you have it to where basically there's no universal ideas presented. There's basically one worldview that's presented, and that's it. And it's such a contrast thinking about the fact that I went to a Christian university and we were presented with more ideas, and we were given more of a universal education, it seems like, than what you're getting now. So I was just curious about that. What's going on? What's the change that's going on? Because it seems to me that it's almost like people don't understand that there's a clash of worldviews, and that this humanistic worldview is truly a worldview, and it's almost a religion. They think of it as Christianity, you're indoctrinating. But with what we're teaching, it's not an indoctrination, it's just the truth. So I don't know if you could speak on that.
Yeah, I think the three predominant worldviews going through the universities are scientific naturalism, postmodernism, relativism, and neo-Marxism, cultural Marxism.
Sure.
And those latter two have combined kind of together to upend the scientific naturalist who's finding his own throne threatened now. And so, a book that's interesting, A Manual for Creating Atheists by Peter Boghossian.
I'm familiar with that.
Yeah, so he's a friend of mine. Sometimes I have more in common with him than I have with some evangelical Christians.
Yeah.
So, I was disinvited by one Christian seminary. I was boycotted by a crew group in northern Utah with Peter Boghossian.
Wow.
And I was disinvited or canceled by an InterVarsity group. Now, I partner with crew. I partner with InterVarsity. We partner legally with them. And I'm former crew staff as well, but they're going through some different times now, and some of their people tend to agree with things that are more down the neo-Marxist channel with social justice. Peter Boghossian invites me to his atheism seminar to lecture on God's existence, and I happily did so, and then we forged an alliance and traveled universities last year lecturing together on viewpoint diversity, the death of intellectual diversity in the universities, because we both happen to believe in the spirit of Voltaire, the deist, that I may disagree with what you say, but I would defend to the death your right to say it.
Yes, that's fantastic.
We don't agree with the Stalinists, like Stalin himself, who says something like, ideas are more powerful than guns. We don't allow our enemies to have guns, so why should we let them have ideas? So the root of cancel culture now is starting to affect even the neo-atheists. And the neo-atheists are being threatened as the left by what is called the new left, the neo-Marxist left. Right. And the neo-Marxist left does not believe in individual rights going all the way back, to John Locke and so forth. They believe in the collective, in the group identity politics, and so forth. The postmodernists typically do not believe in a meta-narrative. They don't believe in objective truth for the most part. And something that we hold in common is that there is objective truth. Yes. Truth is real. It's knowable. For him, he thinks it's only scientific truth, perhaps. And so we'll debate on that. But at least we can have a debate. Right. At least we can respect one another. And again, our Christian worldview, I think, provides a much more robust explanatory power and scope for those commonly held sentiments that we both argue for. Why should I care about your viewpoint? Because you're made in God's image, because you have intrinsic dignity, because I should respect people as individuals, and I have a more robust reason to do that. I can account for free will and why I should be a social activist.
Sure.
Many materialists I don't think can. I don't even think Mark
can help ground your view.
And then I don't have I don't have Darwin's jungle to give me an ethic of why I ought to do to others as I want others to do to me. I have Jesus giving the most robust formulation out of all the scientific or competing religious formulations of the golden rule, the only genuinely golden rule, most of them being silver. So for so many reasons, we can partner together even if we have massive disagreements, because what we're partnering together are on basic civic values. We want to have the right to debate each other. Debate is not hate. It's not hate or celebrate, right? You can disagree with people and still treat them well, but that's not so for some within the postmodern milieu.
Right. And that's what we have definitely seen with the postmodernity is moving away from debate, logic, reason, moving to more feelings, and then tribalism as well. So I was wondering too, is there some action steps that the everyday common folk can take in all of this?
Yeah, I really think we are living in revolutionary times. When we think about a revolution, oftentimes we think about the Russian Revolution in 1917, the Maoist Revolution in China, the French Revolution, which Marx and Lenin absolutely adored as the ideal. But not all revolutions are violent, not initially so. And when it comes to a Marxist movement, and there are different schools of Marxist thought, the two that were thought to be dead were the German and Italian Marxist movements, both of those forming together under Antonio Gramsci and the German Frankfurt School of Critical Theory. Those today are seeing their most robust takeoff ever in America. And so they never died, in fact. They incubated and migrated over to the U.S., and now it's a foreign ideology. It's not left or right, Democrat or Republican. There is a foreign ideology that's come into America, and people do need to come together. There are certain civic values that we hold together that we can disagree on or agree together on, and enable us to disagree agreeably and still treat each other well. I think, we are living in cultural revolutionary times, and it calls for sometimes new, changing alliances. And that's what we're seeking to do at Ratio Christi, ratiochristi.org, if people want to search us. We partner with a plethora of different campus ministries, even to be part of university religious leaders across the street here at Purdue University. You've got to be part of a organization that includes Muslims and Mormons and things like that for religious privileges on campus. Doesn't mean we have to agree together at every point in order to support religious freedom, right?
Sure.
If I'm supporting Christian religious freedom, I should be supporting Mormon and Muslim religious freedom as well. I still want the ability to debate them in love and treat them with gentleness and respect. But it is a freedom of religion and freedom from religion. And that's part of what our founders, who were mostly Christians, and had the ability to the intellectual resources to make something like that happen, supported. So I still want to support that. We want the ability to have a platform like everybody else. And if that takes aligning ourselves with other people who believe in those civic values, then so be it. But I do think that as far as the Christian community goes, we need to consider the university at the forefront of Christian mission. Every church, every campus ministry, every parachurch needs to think about campus ministry and include the professor in that, because hardly anyone is. As goes the university, so goes the culture, and as goes the U.S. university, so goes the world. So that's the most influential institution in civilization, and that's why I serve with Ratio Christi. It's not a great organization because I'm here. I'm here because it's one of the most strategic ministries, I think, in the country, and so I stay here because I think the strategy is right. We've diagnosed the problem correctly. We have to reclaim the intellectual voice of Christ in the universities. We founded the universities, for heaven's sakes.
Yeah.
It might take some time, but we've got to get back in there. Otherwise, we might as well throw in the white flag and give them our children.
Right.
And do you think there's hope to not only win back universities, but almost have a renewal of creating solid schools?
Yeah, I mean, you can't keep retreating forever into Christian cloisters. That has to stop sometime because geography is finite.
I quote.
Yeah. And so at some point we've got to stand up and fight for these things strategically, but we have to do that. And sometimes it can be discouraging. If I had to predict, I would say Europe is going to become Islamic in 2 generations just by virtue of immigration and childbirth alone. America will become Europe with a Marxist twinge, and China might be the future history of the church. But we're called here to not only hold the line, but to advance the cause of Christ. And we can do things bigger and better together. There is hope as long as we don't fragment and we ally ourselves together. This new movement built on intersectionality, that's exactly what they're doing. That's how you get things done. You can still disagree with people, and you don't have to compromise your essentials. But as the Christian community, we need to come together and realize this. But the problem is right now, guys, is that the barbarians are not just at the gates, they're in the citadels. This neo-Marxism, this cultural Marxism, critical theory, social justice, it has invaded the seminaries, the campus ministries, the churches, and the Christian academic societies. And so it's cutting right down the middle. So we need to be educating our own in homeland security, so to speak, and we need to be going after the most influential institutions in civilization, which is the university.
Right. And I know there was a pretty apt assessment on this before, Nancy Pearcey in this, and that a lot of times the conservatives and the Christians would try to target more so the government, which that's great. That's a sphere of influence that we should focus on. But we kind of forgot education, and we forgot that education is what puts out the ideas. It teaches the youth. It forms the mindset. And so we really forgot that in the strategy. Do you think that more Christians should get into becoming a professor and getting into the education field?
Absolutely. Media, academia, ecclesia, those are all significant areas. And the academy in particular, yes, absolutely. It's like storming the beaches of Normandy. It's going to be costly, but if we want to get back on the mainland, we have to do it and be willing to sacrifice to do so. In the 90s, the ratio of left to right professors was 2.3 to 1. It's now 12 to 1 in among those 65 and older getting ready to retire. And for those 40 years old and under who will be here for several decades, it's 23 to 1.
Oh
In
my.
New England, 27 to 1. And in some fields like religious studies, it's 70 to 1. And that's just what's coming into the pipeline. So if we don't start putting more boots on the ground on these university campuses, you really have no business thinking about training them up in the way they should go. And then when they get older, just give them up now, because they will be conscripted to work for the other side.
Right.
And that's what we're seeing happening. The reason why culture is secularizing and
Mhm.
politics being downstream from culture's downstream from education. Give me the textbooks and I will control Germany, Hitler said. Lincoln said that the philosophy of the classroom in one generation will be the philosophy of government in the next, and he was right. So there is no more important mission field than the university campuses. And we've got to go after the professors, try and take the professors who happen to be Christians and make them Christian professors, develop a movement of missional professors. We've got to send in PhD students who are Christians and missional in their mentality. So we need organizations that can provide grants to incentivize those and partner with them and help school them in that kind of thinking and stealth movement. And then we've got to work together with the churches to better equip their students, not only to survive, but also to thrive in the secular university campuses, because secularists have provided a brilliant way to get Christian parents and grandparents to pay for the apostasy of their own children.
Yeah,
That's amazing. Yeah.
And then you see on the flip side of that I've seen Christians have this movement to defund education, but then it seems like we're just kind of receding more from the culture instead of trying to impact it. So I like what you're trying to say, that we really just need to get more professors in there. We need to get more of this legislation out there to have more of that universal of ideas coming back. That's what universities were created for. So I don't think the answer is just receding back.
So here's a good question. Say you live in a county of a decent population, around 600,000 or so, and you want to help equip fellow believers with apologetics, biblical worldview. But, you have major, like, for example, you have a technical institute locally, people from the Middle East come over, it's a melting pot of views and they end up staying. So there's all kinds of worldviews here. How do you get involved in just the starting process of even getting on campus and being involved and so forth?
For somebody who may not be even a student, they're past the student age, or they're not, they don't feel called to necessarily be a professor.
Yeah. And it's important because it almost feels like you can feel like a lone wolf for a little bit, if you will. And I hate the word wolf, but you're not with your whole family working together at first. You got to work with whoever's willing to do it and then keep building from there. So if you're in that scenario, knowing what you know now, what would you do?
Well, if I understand what you're saying correctly, my response would be there are numerous ways to get involved with this movement of trying to reclaim the intellectual voice of Christ on the campuses. And, if there are roughly 5,000 universities and colleges across the United States, pick one. You want Stanford? You want Princeton? We have faculty advisors ready to go. The laborers, the harvest is ripe, but the laborers are few. We need people on these campuses. We're on 140. We've got 4,860 to go. You want to go after high school students? Great. You want to go after professors or PhD students that are future professors? Great. You want to go after college students? Great. You don't have to be a professor to do this. You have to be a follower of Christ who is an evangelist, who loves to do evangelism, but who also thinks strategically about doing evangelism, and that is apologetics evangelism at the university campuses. And we help train people. 2/3 of our people are volunteers. Some of them are bankers, some are pastors, some are attorneys, some are homemakers. Everyone can do it. You got 10 hours a week? Do it. Some want to raise support and become full-time missionaries. We train you how to do that. You can do it full-time. And it's not as hard as you really think, and it provides a heck of a lot more job security than the other jobs out there, too, because you've done the economists, you followed their advice, diversify, diversify, diversify. You got 120 different donors, right? But you come on board with something like Ratio Christi. You tag the local university, college, junior college even, and build into the community that we have online that is going 24/7 in our Facebook groups, sharing ideas, camaraderie, partnerships, resources, prayer requests, and things like that. You try to build a team. We provide the Constitution that's provided by Alliance Defending Freedom for us. So we provide the Constitution. All you need to have is one or two sometimes up to 3 students, depending on the university, to be the student president, vice president, secretary. Some of our clubs operate even without a chapter director, but it's more helpful if there's someone to give students advice. We help you with understanding how to table, how to do outreach. We have a plethora of ebook or booklet resources to take students through as well. And we've got partnerships. If someone feels ill-equipped, between our seminary partnerships, you can come on our staff and you can get up to a 25, 40, or even 50% off tuition from an MA to a PhD at a half a dozen seminaries. If you want to go the quick route, you can get a discount through our partnership with Colson Fellows and get 10 months of worldview training. If you want to soup up your presentational skills or speaking abilities, we have partnerships with organizations that help us do that. So we will help mobilize people who want to be part of the movement to reclaim the intellectual voice of Christ at the universities and have a massive impact downstream in our culture.
Amen.
That's awesome.
That's encouraging.
Yeah.
And I did not realize.
Yeah, you really sold me on Ratio Christi.